FiiO k11 Pro has always been one of the most popular DAC amps that I've reviewed. Today we are reviewing something that replaces it entirely, does everything better, and it's smaller, and yet it comes at the same price of $129. Folks, this is the FiiO k11. It comes with 1,400 milliwatts of power per channel for an impedance of 32 ohms. This is one of the most powerful headphone amplifiers and DACs that exists on today's market, and is not even very pricey. So what did FiiO do to make this smaller and to still give it such a crazy high power? Well, the first thing that they did is to make the power converter an outside unit. This is the power converter. As you can see, the length of the cable is not that long, so you will have to have the unit and a power outlet somewhere near you. I think that is a minor inconvenience, but it is long enough for my usage. We have a multitude of inputs, so besides the power input, you have to have a digital input, and we have a USB Type-C input, we have the optical input and the coaxial input. The coaxial input can also act as a coaxial output, which is pretty cool. We have a line out, we have two headphone outputs, and the two headphone outputs have very different power levels. The balanced headphone output is the better sounding one, with the more power, the better headroom, more dynamic range, better detail and better resolution. The single-ended headphone output is in the larger 6.3mm format, and it doesn't have such a high output impedance, so that one would be good for IEMs or for headphones where you don't need that much power. And when I say that much power, it still has 500 milliwatts of power per channel for a 32 ohm impedance, which is still very good. FiiO k11 is a unique unit this time around because they made it very slim, they made it small, and they made it in such a way that you can have it sitting on the side, like a Mac computer. The unit has a large foot on the underside. There is just one foot which is hexagonal in shape, and that is it. Very interesting design, very different from most DAC amps out there. And the unit has one little display which is part of the island with the two headphone outputs, and we have a volume that clicks very securely into place. It is a very pleasing sound, and you can click on it to browse the menus and to configure it. You can configure a few things, and the most important ones are the color of the LED here, so you can configure this LED to be a different color. You have cyan, you have purple, you have blue, white, red, and a few other colors, but usually I leave it on cyan or white because those look most natural to my eyes. We also have the display here, which you can configure to either stay on at all times or to turn off after a while. The display allows you to see the current volume, the current gain level, the current data rate. So if you are on PCM, this can decode up to 384 kHz, a 32-bit signal. For DSD, we have DSD up to 265, which is still very good. The unit is very resistant to scratches, and besides the under part being screwed in and held together by 6 screws, the unit is very solid. Like, this is a unit that doesn't have any kind of flex, there is no creaking, feels like one giant slab of metal. Once again, the FiiO seems to draw inspiration from Apple here, and the shape is very satisfying to see on your desk, to hold in hand and to interact with. You typically plug in the power, plug in one of the digital inputs, for example the USB Type-C input, and plug in either headphones or a stereo system, because at the back we have a line out in the RCA format. The line out is very clean, very transparent, and has a very good resolution. It doesn't really have much of a coloration because even the headphone amplifier doesn't have much of a coloration. This is one of the cleanest, honest sounding units out there. It will leave the headphones, the IEMs and the music to do the coloration, and it will stay crisp, clean, clear and neutral. While using the unit, I've noticed that it has a huge difference between the gain levels. While with most units the gain levels tend to change the volume a bit, with FiiO k11 you have 20 decibels of a difference between the gain levels. This means that between the low gain and the high gain there is 40 decibels of difference. I can't emphasize this enough, but that difference is huge, and I mean it is humongously huge. When you go from low gain to mid gain, you run the risk of blowing your eardrums out if you were already listening loud. You have to be very careful. Low gain is very low, medium gain is very medium, and high gain is incredibly loud. That isn't the case with most units, but with FiiO k11 it is. Also notice that the volume isn't fully linear, so on high gain you have most of the volume spread on the first 50 steps of the volume, and after that it increases very slowly. On the low gain, the increase is very linear, so with each step you get a linear increase compared to the other steps. Very interesting stuff. The best sound is with high gain for hard-to-drive headphones and low gain for EMs. I have noticed this. Some newer units tend to sound better on low gain for EMs, while older units, especially the stuff that I reviewed over the past years, used to sound best at high gain with everything. Well, FiiO k11, that isn't true. You get a better sound, better control, lower distortion, and better overall clarity with low gain for EMs, and you get a better overall dynamic range, headroom, and overall punchiness with high gain for hard-to-drive headphones. Since we're talking about hard-to-drive headphones, FiiO k11 can safely drive HiFiMan HA1000 SA. This is one of the hardest to drive headphones in the entire world. I mean, it isn't quite as hard to drive as Audi's LCD5, but it still is very hard to drive. FiiO k11 Pro can fully drive it. I can't guarantee that you will like the sound because the FiiO k11 Pro is very neutral and the HA1000 SA is also pretty neutralish, so the pairing sounds quite brightish. The thing is, it can drive it. It can push a very good sub bass, very clean sound, no distortion, and it is very satisfying to listen to. With the low gain, you can drive the Campfire Bonneville, which is one of my favorite EMs currently. It may even replace the Sennheiser EA900 because this one has a fuller and bolder bass and sub-bass and a sparklier treble, which I actually am looking forward to. So please look on my review on the Campfire Bonneville. FiiO k11 Pro can drive both of those, which are both extremes. With the Bonneville, you can hear a bit of hissing in the background, and that is because the balanced headphone output has about 2.5 ohms of output impedance. That is an impedance that will cause problems when the EMs have a low impedance. That means you will hear a very, very faint but distinct hissing in the background. That isn't audible usually with music, but it is audible if you aren't playing anything. You will hear a very, very silent shh, kinda like that. Over the balanced headphone output, I haven't been able to hear that with any headphone at all, but with EMs I have noticed it with most EMs I have. So only EMs that have a high impedance didn't show it, but I don't have a lot of EMs with a high impedance. Generally speaking, the sound of k11 is very pleasing. It has a full, deep sound in the bass, but the bass is colorless. You don't get any kind of extra warmth, you don't get a rolled off bass, you just get the pure bass that the song has, and you have all of the coloring done by the headphones or the EMs. Somehow it has this thing where it is extremely linear, even relative to the impedance. This means that with low impedance, high impedance, with planars, with dynamics, everything just sounds in its own character. It doesn't change the character, it is not very sensitive to the impedance, to the technology of the headphones connected to it. It just has the same very transparent signature. And FiiO didn't even implement a very complex circuit. I mean, it is pretty complex, but it is not groundbreaking. It is $129. It's not pricey by my standards. I'm using much pricier devices on a daily basis, and yet FiiO k11 can sound so clean and crisp without even breaking a sweat. It's like it can stay neutral. The mid-range is neutral, but yet it can manage to make instruments sound natural. For example, a wooden instrument will sound like wood. A cymbal will sound natural. It won't have an extra shimmer, it won't have extra harshness. When the cymbal is metallic and the drummer crashes it, it sounds like metal is crashing. It doesn't sound attenuated, and that is the fun part with the treble because it sounds very natural as well. It is not attenuated, not extra bright, it is just perfectly linear, and that is very cool. Something like the FiiO k11 would be ideal for someone running a little studio. I could master and mix with this endlessly because it doesn't add any kind of coloration. While it may sound like it is the perfect device, there are many other options, especially from FiiO, which are also in a similar price range, which do sound very differently and have very different abilities. The first device that comes to mind is the FiiO BTR15, and this one is a Bluetooth receiver. This is made for you to take with you on the go. You just clip it to your shirt, you plug in a pair of EMs, and you are good to go. FiiO BTR15 doesn't have a high output impedance, so it won't hiss with most EMs, but it doesn't have the driving power quite as high as FiiO k11. FiiO k11 is much better for driving hard-to-drive headphones. FiiO BTR15 is better for EMs, and while it doesn't have such a high driving power, it is very, very clean, controlled and crisp with most EMs, so you get a very good sound. The soundstage on the k11 is much wider the instrument separation is better and the sound is more holographic in general, while with FiiO BTR15 the sound is more intimate, soundstage is smaller and in a more spherical shape around you, while with FiiO k11 the sound tends to be just more expanded in the width, deeper but not necessarily taller, so it is a very wide, large disc around you of music playing. FiiO BTR15 is around the same price point and it can be used as a USB DAC, but it doesn't have line outs. So this one is better for someone who is often on the go and doesn't have a stereo system and doesn't want something that can only be used at the desktop. FiiO k11 can only be used at the desktop, while FiiO BTR15 can be configured to either charge from the source or not. FiiO k11 never charges from the source, so it won't drain your smartphone's batteries if you connect a smartphone to it. FiiO k11 works without a driver, there is no USB DAC delay, everything is absolutely perfect. It is very rare that I get to make a video review and not complain about something. So FiiO k11 is very hard to complain about because it is affordable, it works well, and it is very neutral. Those are the characteristics that you don't complain about usually. You complain about sonic coloration, USB DAC delay, and other stuff that just doesn't happen with the k11. Of course, I have to put it in its place with something, and also something from FiiO. So here is the thing. You can think that FiiO k11 is perfect, right? Because I describe it as such. And for its price point, for $129 I can't really recommend something that is much better. It is pretty much ideal, but at the same time, once you are a dedicated audiophile and once you invest quite a bit in your system, FiiO Q15 comes into play. This is about $400, $399. It has a much stronger headphone amplifier, a better DAC inside. It can be used via Bluetooth, two USB Type-C inputs, one for data, one for power. The thing is, FiiO Q15 can sound quite a bit better than FiiO k11. It's like FiiO Q15 has a much more realistic sound, better bass, somehow it has better punch, better depth, every bass note is better defined, everything just sounds cleaner, more crisp and more dynamic. Of course, a higher resolution is always desirable for an audiophile, but for about 3 times the price, FiiO Q15 can be more fun if you already are a dedicated listener, while this will be better, for example, if you actually do have HiFiMan HE1000 SA or HiFiMan Aria Organic, or at least HiFiMan Ananda Nano. If you don't have something as good as the Ananda Nano, then FiiO k11 is a better investment. This is because usually the headphones will make more of a difference, especially in the entry-level range. So FiiO Q15 is for someone who already has a good system and wants to improve on that system, wants a better sound. FiiO k11 is for someone who is mainly using more affordable entry-level headphones. For example, for Sennheiser HD660S2, I think that the k11 is perfect if you want an affordable DAC amp that you can simply plug in and use. There are better options, there are always better options, especially when it comes to the sound. You have to test them and use your own ears to decide, but I personally think that FiiO k11 is a really sweet deal. So I could be using this to do my reviews, to do studio work, to do a lot of stuff and be happy with it because it's transparent, it doesn't impose a coloration on my system, it doesn't have advanced features like EQ, which I even forgot to mention, but FiiO BTR15 has, but it does have this, a very natural, realistic sound, a good level of resolution and detail, a wide holographic soundstage, and a very honest sound. And of course, a very high price performance ratio. Thank you so much. Don't forget, if you want to order the FiiO k11, I have a link in the video description. I hope that you have enjoyed the video. Please subscribe to Audiophile Heaven, like this video, and I hope we'll see each other really soon. Bye!